Hey guys, this is Genefix coming to you from Rig for Epic, and this is my attempted review at Spider-Man 2 on PC. Um, yeah, it's not been as smooth or as flawless as I was hoping. So, long story short, we were hoping for a far better port from Nixxes and Sony on Spider-Man 2. Obviously, the last couple of days have been pretty bad in terms of like performance, crashing, lots of people just unable to play the game. I've had crashes, I've had performance issues, I've had shadows flickering, textures flickering. It's been a real shit show, and a lot of people were banking on Nexus providing another amazing port, and unfortunately they dropped the ball on this one. So over the last few days, we've seen two hot fixes, and we've seen one official patch number one, which arrived yesterday. I can't speak for everyone else out there, but I get the feeling that things are starting to improve quite a bit. So that's the crashing, the texture problems, and the poor performance. Now, personally, hotfix number two kind of increased the crashing for me. I was crashing once every hour, and at that point, I kind of decided to just hold off and wait for like a month to review the game. And then I just sat down at my computer and I was like, I really want to play this game because I do love the game. So I ended up kind of suffering through it. And towards the last 2 days, the crashing seemed to ebb away and disappear. So last night I actually finished the game, and I think I've got enough footage to do a review. So here we go. So as I mentioned in my last review, I'm doing something called reverse reviews, which basically means I'm going to give you my score first, and then if that's all you're after, I'm not holding you here until the end. You can just get the score and go about your day. So my score for Spider-Man 2 on PC is 89 out of 100. It would have been higher, but the game is released in such a poor state that unfortunately I've had to take a few points off. So it would have been around a 92, 93. As I'll discuss, I do really enjoy the game, but as it stands, 89 is the score for this game. The other thing worth mentioning is that I'm going to keep the volume of the clips I've recorded down to zero on this review, just because Sony are infamous for copyright striking channels. Because if you play the music in the background and it's one of their licensed tracks, then obviously you're not paying them to produce that in public, and so they will do a copyright strike. So yeah, it's a shame. I would like a little bit of sound in the background, but for this review, unfortunately, you're just going to hear my voice. So that's just the way it is. So as mentioned, I absolutely love Spider-Man as a hero in films, in comics, in games. I just love the character. I adore the 2018 version of the game, the first Insomniac game. They just nailed it. They nailed the traversal, the swinging, the grappling, the combat, the way he moves around. Just the whole thing was just completely and utterly, yeah, this is Spider-Man. And I played it on PS4, then I played it on PS5, I've played it on PC, and then obviously we had Miles Morales come out, which was another great game. It was a bit smaller, obviously. There was a bit less ambition, but you could see the improvements also filtering through the process. The graphics were now starting to really become more vivid. The animations were better. So I think we've had a really good run so far. And then Spider-Man 2 comes along. Now, there's been some debate about whether Spider-Man 2 is as big as the original 2018 version of Spider-Man. And I think it feels like it's smaller and it feels like it's quicker to complete. Now, there are less actual main missions, but how the fluff content, as I call it, around it, the missions where you go and do like points on the map, I feel like they are just about as much, maybe a bit more. So maybe that's why Insomniac say that it does overall pan out about the same. I'm not really concerned about whether it's bigger or smaller. If it to me, it's whether it feels like it's right for the story, and I think it definitely is right for the story. I remember finishing the main story in Spider-Man 2 and feeling like, yeah, I was happy with this. I was happy with the way it went. I was happy with the amount of content we got. The main stories all covered the points. I don't feel like we were shortchanged, but overall, objectively, I do feel like it is. If you want the answer, if it's smaller, yeah, I think Spider-Man 2 was overall smaller than Spider-Man 1. So, in terms of traversal, I think it's very similar to the first game and Miles. They've used the same blueprint of swing, grapple, point launch. You can run on buildings, you can leap off them, you can stop and crawl around. You can do all the cool things like hanging off a ceiling and then just like coming down on a web, things like that. So the difference is really there's a few extra moves. There's like a loop the loop. There's one move where you can be off a wall and still grapple around a corner with a web. That's very cool. I love that one. But the big difference is the wingsuit, which I think was probably included from the films. The wingsuit is very cool. So as it sounds like, you're swinging along, you press F or whatever it is on controller, and you can deploy a wingsuit and then glide. Once you glide in, you are essentially Rico from the Just Cause games. You just scooting along through the air. You're not swinging anymore. You're just in the current of the air. I love the effects of the wind buffering against the fabric of the wingsuit. It really does make you feel like it's elemental and like you are actually up in like an air current. And speaking of air currents, they've added updrafts and they've added airflows to the city itself to allow you to navigate the city. You can't stay up forever, but almost. I mean, are there some purists out there that will hate the wingsuit? Of course. It's taken away from the swinging aspects of Spider-Man, and I'm not hugely into the comics, so maybe the wingsuit was there at some point in the comics, so maybe it is like a classical thing, but it feels like the wingsuit was included, the web wings, get it right, was included after some of the films were made as like a gimmick. And so yeah, some classic Spider-Man fans may not be impressed, but overall I think if you don't overuse it and you just include it into your traversal, it is a really handy thing, like going from one skyscraper to another, a distant skyscraper. Really handy. Or just it just feels good to fly around. And once you get into an air current going like under the bridges, it feels so cool to be going that fast. And obviously helps show off the really nice tech they've got in this game that allows you to move fast through the city. So any good superhero needs a villain, and in this one we've got a few decent ones. But in the first one, I felt like the first game had a better roster of villains. We had Doc Ock with his tragic story. We had Rhino, we had Fisk, we had Mr. Negative, we had Scorpion, we had Electro, we had Vulture, we had Tombstone and Shocker, who got their foot in the door. And yeah, it just felt like they just crammed so many villains into that game. And not in just like getting them in kind of way. They all had their own mechanics. They all had their own little set pieces, and it felt really good. And I feel like the sequel has kind of gone back a notch in terms of the roster. So I think compared to the first game, the villains in Spider-Man 2, while they have got quite a bit of screen presence, especially Venom, in other ways they are quite two-dimensional, because Venom is essentially doing what he's doing. I can't really say exactly what he's doing, but it's very on the nose. And Craven's ultimate goal is to find the ultimate prey, the ultimate adversary. And that's pretty much it, really. I felt like the betrayal that Peter felt from Martin Lee and Doc Ock in the first game made you really feel that, loss when he had to then confront them and fight them. And that added to a really good story, a really good story arc, and I think that's missing in the second game. Obviously, on top of the main characters and the main villains, you've also got quite a few little subplots going on. You've got Miles speaking to his uncle and getting things sorted with him. You've got the fact that Harry is now pops up from being ill, and is now on the scene and is like competing for attention with Peter, and Peter's starting to spend more time with Harry, and so Miles is getting his nose pushed out. And that's kind of a interesting dynamic as well. And then you've got MJ doing her thing. And yeah, there's quite a few different dynamics. And I did like the fairground scene. I thought it was a very well-made scene. It was very very dramatic. And yeah, I thought overall a lot of the little components of the story come together quite well. Now, obviously, one of the big differences between this game and the other two games is that now we have both Spider-Men in the same place. And there are some ways they've used that pretty well. Like obviously in some of the main missions, you got Spider-Man and Miles both in the same scene, and you control one of them, and they did that pretty well. Obviously it's a single player game, so they have to like jump between the two. I like the way you can jump between the two most of the time in the main open world, and I like the way that when you're doing some of the smaller fights on rooftops and whatnot, either Miles or Peter will turn up and give you an assist, even though sometimes they bugger up your bonus thing when you're trying to do a certain amount of attacks or whatever. They can kill everybody or get rid of them before you've even done that, and that's really annoying. But overall, it works pretty well. I just think I wish they'd used it a little bit more to have both Spider-Men in the same game. I'm not exactly sure how they could have done that. I'm not game designer, but I just felt like the big thing was both Spider-Men in the same game, and yeah, I think it would have been nice to see a few more different dynamic events or game mechanics that use that. So in terms of the actual city, you've obviously got a huge residential area built on where Peter Parker lives, Aunt May's house is. And apart from that, it's essentially the same city. Now, how does it look? Well, it looks a lot better, to be fair. They've really increased the fidelity of the city. There's just so much more color, I think. If you compare the first game to the second game, the first game looked amazing, but then in comparison, you start to notice that the first game feels a bit sparse and a bit empty compared to the second game. Second game's got like more color in the trees. When you swish past trees, there's like leaves like coming off. There's more people in the streets. There's more traffic. There's just generally more color in the city, because a city is, even though it's skyscrapers and it's steel and glass. In a city, there is lots of color, and in this sequel, yeah, it's very colorful, very vibrant. You got loads of graffiti and extra details in all the city streets. You got like bins and things on the sidewalk, a bit more grit as well. And I think overall, I love the way that the second game looks. I'm going to come to the end of my review soon, guys. I think I've said everything I want to say about the game. It is, on paper, an absolutely fantastic sequel. It's got a really nice set of villains. You've got an interesting story. You've got improvements to the traversal. You've got improvements to the combat. The actual game world has been developed. It looks better. It plays better. They've really pushed the technology in terms of how fast you can go through the city. And even in the first boss fight, when Sandman throws you through the skyscraper, it's actually incredible to see a game render a city that fast. And so I think overall, it's a great sequel. I just think it could have done a little bit more in terms of the story, and it does feel a little bit smaller. Now, some people say it was rushed. That may be true. It did come out pretty fast, to be fair, but obviously, who knows? I mean, we're not in the development team, are we? So I think it's one of them. You just have to take it as you find it. But I found it to be a really good sequel, and I really enjoyed playing through it. Obviously, the elephant in the room is the issues on PC. Now, as I'm recording this, a lot of the issues have been already solved. Now, there's always going to be somebody out there on PC that's got a continuing issue, but I think overall the PC issues have been fixed by the three patches. Now, obviously, Insomniac and Nixxes have got some work to do in terms of optimization and just to continue to work on the port. It's a real shame that this happened, because up until now they've had an almost flawless record. I just hope that the next game, which is The Last of Us Part 2, comes out in a really good state, and then everyone can put this little blip down to, maybe them being overworked or having too much on. They have been doing a lot of different projects, doing the Horizon remaster, and then it's just been a lot for them to take on. So maybe that's the thing. Maybe they just need to, take on a few less projects and just focus on what they do best. I do love Nixxes as a studio. I love a lot of Sony games, and bringing them to PC was always my dream, and they have made that a reality for the most part. So I just hope this was a blip, and yeah, the next game comes out flawless. And I think I'm going to wrap it up there, guys. That's my review for Spider-Man 2 on PC. I've really enjoyed playing the game, despite the issues, and I'm sure I'll play it again in the future when it's been fully patched. If you could give me a like and maybe subscribe to the channel, that would be awesome. I'm still learning. I'm still getting used to recording my voice, as you can probably tell. But any comments, criticisms, any funny stories with the game, just fire away in the comments. And I love talking to people. I love chatting to people. So if you want to tell me something or have open a conversation, just stick it in the comments. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you guys next time. Take care. Bye bye.